Hello and welcome. My name is Kelly Kingston from the Wellness Business Academy.
And I'm Graham Donnelly from Global Crypto College.
Tonight we are talking to you about the future of business. Graham's going to head this talk tonight, and he's just going to be talking about the difference between...
Basically, what I want to talk about tonight, Kelly, is the difference between creating a real business in my definition and definitions that I've adopted from others versus creating a job or a J.O.B, which the acronym colloquially stands for just over broke. And a lot of people leave employment or create a business with the view that they're going to create this fantastic life and have everything will be wonderful, but what they actually do is create some problems. So we talk about what is a real business and whether that suits some of the people who might be listening and how to get there.
Awesome. So how do you want to start tonight? Do you want me to put the slide up? Do you want me to do
I think
that
so,
now?
yeah.
Okay.
What we're going to put up on the screen behind us is a diagram from an author called Robert Kiyosaki, who a lot of you may have heard of, who wrote a best-selling book many years ago called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he talks about the difference between his rich dad, which was actually a friend and mentor who was very much an entrepreneur and a business person, versus his poor dad, who was actually his real father, who was in a J.O.B, and certain circumstances led for him to realize there was such a big difference between the two. What we're going to do tonight is talk about what the differences are, and allow people to understand where they sit. The diagram behind us is from Robert Kiyosaki's second book called The Cash Flow Quadrant, and this diagram is in fact the cash flow quadrant. So I might just spend a little minute just discussing what that means for our viewers, and then we can move on and answer some questions and so on. What we have behind us is a diagram with 4 quadrants.
I'm just going to just...
The E stands for employee, and that's where we generate our cash flow from receiving money for trading time with other people. So we work for others. We basically have a job. We rock up to work every day and receive payment for our wages. The S stands for self-employed, where you actually own a job, but you don't actually have a business. And this is where a lot of people believe, so potentially in our audience, is, well, I have my own business.
Yeah.
I would actually dispute that on a technicality, because I'm saying they're self-employed, not actually owning a business, and I'll explain why. The B on the other side of the quadrant stands for B type, or a business owner.
Yeah.
And this is where you actually own a system that works for you, so you don't necessarily have to rock up to work every day. And the last quadrant, just to finish off, is I for investor, where you have money working for you. And that a classic example of that would be you own investment properties or share portfolios or other passive investments where you receive that passive income without technically getting out of bed every morning. So the differences between the left-hand side of the quadrant, where the E and the S are, is that on that side, our income potential is limited, and it's limited by the number of hours that we put into our employment, business. That's really our self-employed status. And because of that, it's active, because we have to show up every day to get paid. Or after a while, anyway, our leave and so on would run out and we stop getting paid. Whereas on the other side of the quadrant, the B and the I, it's effectively unlimited, which means that we don't have any limit to the amount of income we can earn, because it's not tied to the number of hours that we put in. And because of that, it's passive. It's a passive income stream that basically shows up without, literally, as I said, getting out of bed. So it's not about which is right or wrong. It's simply a realization of where we create our cash flow from. And from there, how we can create a future where we're not trading time for money every day. And I know that a lot of people in our audience would be in that space.
I was just about to say that there's so many people out there, you know, a lot of our friends that are in business, and people on a basis, they are in that situation right now.
And one of the sad parts about that is a lot of people leave an employment scenario where I guess they feel rather safe. They get a regular paycheck.
Yeah.
They may not have a passion for it, which is obviously important, as we all know. But what they do is they trade that for what they and some colleagues of mine, a very good friend of mine, George Bacanchev, wrote a book called Red Day Coaching, where he talks about the big lie that they create. So instead of creating the big life, which is more money, less time, more time with their family, more time doing the things they love, they actually create the big lie, because they actually end up working longer hours, and they replace a boss that they not necessarily didn't like, but they didn't like that relationship, with a worse one. Yeah. And it's themselves. So they become the worst boss that they could possibly create.
Very critical of themselves. Sometimes we tend to be in situations where we want to know everything and we want to do everything, but we can't.
Yeah, of course. Whereas people in business basically have the ability to earn income without showing up. And one of the definitions or the ways that people can decide whether they are creating cash flow out of the B quadrant or the S quadrant is really simple. And the test is that if you stopped showing up in your business tomorrow and didn't receive emails, phone calls, or communications from staff and went away for a whole year, what would you come back to? And most people would say, well, nothing, because it all relies on their input to create that cash flow. Yeah. So that would mean that they would be creating their cash flow out of the S quadrant, not the B quadrant, where a lot of people who create income out of the B quadrant, and like examples of Microsoft and people of that type of ilk, they have businesses because they don't have to show up and do a 40-hour week to get paid, and they can earn an unlimited amount of income. So that's the definition. Often people in business, the stakeholder, the shareholder or whatever, is actually better off not being there, because the systems have been put in place for a reason to run a successful business. So once we recognize where our income comes from, and it's okay to be employed or self-employed. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But what we've got to recognize is if that's where our cash flow is coming from, how do we get off the treadmill? How do we get out of the rat race, as Robert Kiyosaki would quote? And the way we do that is we allocate funds from our employment and self-employed activities into the B or the I quadrant. So we invest in passive assets, properties and share portfolios and other things that we talk about, create passive income. That's how we build up. So a lot of these principles also came. So for the audience, if you're looking for a bit more information about this, you can pick up Robert Kiyosaki's first two books for probably less than $20 each at any bookstore. And I really recommend them as a decent read, quite an easy read, but the first two definitely highly recommended. The other reference that I've used for many years in our business consulting space is a book by a guy called Michael Gerber. And he wrote a book called The E-Myth. And the E stands for entrepreneurial myth. Yeah. And it's about entrepreneurs creating businesses, not jobs. So it's another complementary text that I would highly recommend to people. The good thing about that, and I've recommended them to clients for 20 plus years. Yeah. And the good thing about that is that if people have a little bit of background as to the concepts, then they go and see their advisors, they talk to people like yourself, for example, create a better business, then you're already talking to them on a different level, because you're not actually having to discuss the differences between an S and a B. They're already there. They already say, well, I'm an S, I get that, I'm happy there, but I need to create some passive income. Or I'm an S and I want to create a business. How do I do that? And there is a way to get from S to B. It's a process.
Let's just have a look here. So we've got an employee, you have a job, and then you go to the S quadrant where you're self-employed. That's where you're starting off in your business. Correct. And you own a job. Okay, because you're pretty well much creating it for yourself, right?
Yes.
So from the S quadrant to the B quadrant, how long do you think it would take for a self-employed person to own their job in where they currently are in their business to a B type quadrant, having their business work for them?
For sure. it's obviously every situation is different, but if people are committed, what we find is that the hardest thing and the biggest challenge for us in the coaching and consulting space, and I know that you find this as well, is changing people's mindset about all I got to do is work a little bit harder or work a few more hours and all my problems will be solved. I actually don't agree with that, neither do people like Kiyosaki and Gerber. They would actually argue that you work smarter, not harder. And that's, I think, a quote straight out of Michael Gerber's book, where you actually can focus your attentions on the things that you are uniquely good at more often than not, and try to build systems and procedures around others where you can outsource, delegate, or even abdicate those tasks because they're not the thing that you should be focusing on. The challenge we have is how you use it. Generally, we need assistance in that, which is where people like yourself can help small businesses who are in the S quadrant, who would like to create less hours in their day, but still retain a high level of profitability and a high income stream. And again, coming back to my mate George Bakanchev from Red Day Coaching Origins, he created a system where his business owners work no more than 24 hours a week.
Yeah, I think that's really, really cool.
And it is cool because the reason they do that is because, or can do that, is because those 24 hours are spent mostly on the things that they're uniquely good at. And they've got systems and procedures and other tools in their business that will allow them to do less hours but make more money, have more time. Part of their concept is that they work a maximum of the business owners work a maximum of 24 hours a week, take 170 days off a year. Now, that's more than half a year, or getting close to half a year, sorry. But it's interesting that if you're an employee working for somebody else, by definition, you get 144 days off a year. You're getting paid to take 144 days off. So your employer is paying you 4 weeks annual leave, sick leave, holiday pay, public holidays, and so on. And it roughly works out in most jurisdictions about 144 days. So my argument is, if I'm going to pay someone to take 144 days off and I'm the business owner taking all the risks and putting all the capital in and having the sleepless nights, then why shouldn't I at least get the same? And a little bit more. So, and there are definitions around that. It's a tough gig.
It is.
But I know of a lot of businesses that have gone through the Red Day system with people like George, some coaches, friend of ours, Hutchison, who have done this, who are living this, proof of this procedure, and other models as well that I guess promote a similar concept. But the concept is, how do we move from S to B? Firstly, we have to want to for the right reasons. Once we want to, then it's a process where I would suggest there's a lot of the things that you do with your customers and clients, where you help them, you coach them, you mentor them, you provide them with the skills that they need to be able to make that transition. And it's all about planning, and it's all about procedures and systems and all those things. But they allow us to transition from one quadrant to the other without hopefully too many hassles.
And so we go from B-type quadrant, from a business owner to investor. Do you want to explain a little bit about that? And as a business owner, now having your business work for you, how much or what percentage of your profits would you put into an investor or an investment quadrant? Absolutely.
Well, remembering what I said earlier, and I know that we've got arrows on our slide here that sort of direct us from E to S to B to I, and that's kind of the ideal pattern. To answer your question first, there's other classic texts in the financial space that sort of allocate different percentages. The pay yourself first concept, where we often, as self-employed people, end up on the back of the queue, and after we pay our staff and our landlords and our utility bills, we're standing at the back of the line, and by the time it gets to us, there's nothing left. So,
or very little. So
the concept is to pay yourself first. And the book I'm referring to there is another one, Richard, that 10%. So to me, when people ask me that question, I always say, well, let's start with 10%.
Yeah.
Pay myself 10% first, put it into a strategy that over time builds up to a point where I'm creating enough passive income from that to be able to then say, well, I'm actually going to work, whether it be E, S, or even B, but of course we don't B is passive anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm happy to be in the S quadrant, but I don't have to be because I'm only there because I love it. So I'm creating enough cash flow out of the I quadrant not to have to go to work. And that creates a completely different mindset on people because I don't have to get out of bed every day and go and do a job that I necessarily, what do they say? I'm getting up every day to do a job, to earn money, to pay people I don't like for things I don't need or something. There's a cliche there around somewhere.
Yeah.
But instead of doing that, I'm actually getting out of bed every day.
Yeah.
To do this path. I've heard you say, well, that's not work.
It's not actually. I actually said it today. Yeah, with one of my clients. So.
And it's true. Like it doesn't feel like work if you're actually getting up every day and doing something you love.
Yeah.
So I would always start there, but the more you can allocate to an investment strategy that is then going to create future passive income, then of course the faster you're going to get there.
Yes.
And of course we help coach our clients across a number of sectors, as you know, including cryptocurrencies as a potential investment strategy or opportunity that can create passive income in the future. Not the only one, of course, because there are other modes and other methodologies to use to increase your cash flow from passive sources. But of course, we believe that crypto is a viable option in that space and one to be considered.
Seeing that you've mentioned crypto, is there any news from our last show last week about crypto as well? Is there any news with any more of the big corporates coming on board? And is it still fluctuating? The Bitcoin prices.
Yep.
What can you? Just some highlights.
Don't be confused or misled that doesn't have volatility. There's no question. And since we spoke, I think a week or two ago about cryptocurrencies as a potential a unit of exchange and in asset class, the market has in fact increased reasonable amount. I'm talking probably more than 10%.
Yeah.
So if you had $100 in cryptocurrencies in the majors, which is one that we generally recommend to people, then it's 10% more. You've made yourself an extra $10 for doing nothing since then. Now, of course, that could fall tomorrow, but we don't believe that is the case with the trend continuing upwards. In terms of new players in the market, there are literally bulletins released every single day where there is positive news in the cryptocurrency space where large corporations are taking payment in cryptocurrencies for their services, or like the kind of the Facebooks, and we mentioned Reserve Bank a few weeks ago who are mentioning it as well.
Yeah.
We've got the Chinese government talking about it, have been talking about it for some time, changing the way that potentially, world currencies are managed, which is even beyond my level of capabilities, but very high level economic sort of conversation. But there's a lot happening in that space as well. So that is literally every day. I couldn't quote you a specific company. We mentioned a lot of the big ones last time, your Ubers and your Amazons and, so on. So I think that's just an ongoing, snowballing that as we get on board, as in big corporations, then it'll just keep growing. And that's what we believe is why it's a valuable consideration in people's strategies, and they need to get advice on that from the right people.
Yeah, cool. So is there any last words that you could leave a self-employed person that is currently a job owner within their self-employed business? Yeah. Any tips or tricks?
I think the tip is to recognise first and foremost where you are receiving your cash flow from. So where do you create your income, and recognising which quadrant you're in. Once you know where you are and have accepted that that's where you are, then you then can make the decision, well, am I happy where I am?
Yeah.
Or do I want to transition into the right-hand side of the quadrant where life is a lot easier? There's no question. But it doesn't really happen because they're not what you want. So once you recognise where you are, decide where you want to be.
Yes.
And then seek out people like yourself to help you get there.
And do your planning.
Well, planning becomes a very strong part of that. As you know.
Absolutely.
You can't get there without a plan. Absolutely not.
Okay, so if you have any questions, please message us, comment below. If you're struggling in your business and you need to have some tips or tricks, or you want to move from an S quadrant part of your business to the B quadrant and you're not sure on how to do that either, please message us. Our businesses are highlighted in the comments above, and we are more than happy to support you in anywhere you are, whether you're self-employed, wanting to go from an employed J.O.B to your self-employed position, investments, Graham's a business strategist and investment portfolios and all sorts of different things happening in his business that supports so many different people. Anything else?
I think that's about all for tonight. I think if people, need references to the, some of the literature that I mentioned, happy to put that up maybe as a link later on, if we could do that.
I'll add that later.
Send us a message and I'll send it through to them.
Yeah.
No problem. But I think the last point in that is kind of referring you to those sort of texts. It's all about educating ourselves. I've always spoken about financial intelligence. And it's all about increasing our financial intelligence to a higher level, which means we can have a better discussion with our advisors, with our colleagues, because we know a little bit more. So reading Kiyosaki, reading J.O.B, embarking a bit more research into this space is just increase financial intelligence to get us on the path to where we want to be.
And to make wiser decisions.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, do we?
Nope, don't. So thank you so much for joining us all tonight. Again, if you have any questions regarding being in business, being employed, or wanting to invest and being an investor, please message us, and I will leave some comments on the books that Graham's referred and made reference to in our show tonight. And that's it for us. So thank you so much. Thank you so much to Sarah Watkins, what is she? CEO. CEO of Spiritual Events and Directory, for having us this evening. We are extremely grateful to you. Thank you so much to everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Wednesday evening. Thanks so much. Bye now.
Good night. Take care.